The traditional roll-up model says you buy, 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 buy. You integrate all these different mom and pop companies into the singular business or the investment group that you've created, right? So maybe use Public Storage. That's a classic roll-up model where they bought lots and lots and lots and lots of self-storage mom and pop self-storages, I should say. They started down near San Diego, they expanded through the Southwest, and then they expanded nationally. They're a multi-billion dollar company. They're very, very, very successful. Waste Management is another one. Blockbuster is another one. There are others, right? This is when you buy. You integrate using the same standard operating procedures into a consortium, and ultimately you're able to sell at a greater valuation because you're buying each individual business at 2 to 3 times earnings, for example, and then you're able to sell the entire portfolio at, say, 8 times earnings. You create that arbitrage in the middle. That is how you make money with a roll-up model. The Warren Buffett types, the classic investor types, more believe in buying stable assets that are likely to appreciate, great businesses that will cash flow or that will give off dividends. These individuals will buy companies in different sectors. Buffett obviously is a huge investor in Coca-Cola. He bought See's Candy. He owns, I believe it's Clayton Homes, and there may even be a larger holding company that holds a lot of the different companies because he also has a mortgage group. He owns Geico Insurance, right? So all of these different companies that Buffett and Charlie Munger and co with Berkshire Hathaway have bought, but they have not practiced a roll-up model yet. Of course, they're multi-billionaires. Like I talked about in my prior videos, I'm a big believer that there's elements of both that you can implement into your strategy. I want to talk to you about that strategy, but first I want to talk to you about the last video I made. I talked about how billionaire type investors buy companies and what they look for. I referenced Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. I talked about Sam Zell. I talked about others. You can see that video. And there are big distinctions between how these billionaire investor types go about creating their wealth versus a roll-up strategy, right? So think about Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett, for example, firstly, to give one end of the continuum. These are individuals, and this is a group that has made shrewd acquisitions. They've been very patient. Their motto is rule 1, never lose money. Rule 2, refer to rule 1, right? This is more or less how I like to start investment groups, by making great initial acquisitions, because I'm a deep believer that obviously when you don't have a huge backup, that if you buy 1 or 2 bad companies to get the thing started, you're done, you're cooked, right? So that's the idea of ensuring that you buy a great company so that you can build a proper foundation, learn the best operational protocols, and then proceed. However, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the roll-up strategy as a follow-up video to that prior one, because the roll-up strategy is really more about you learn the best operational processes for a certain type of business. You think Waste Management, where you go to dispose of your junk. You think of Blockbuster, which now is a dinosaur, but if you recall 15 or 10 years ago, Blockbuster was everything, right? I mean, Friday nights were all about going to Blockbuster and renting videos. And those were companies, and there are many others, that grew massively by buying all of the mom and pops in a given area, and then overall in a given nation. They could roll up the whole nation over time. And this is really much more about speed, about repetition, about pulling the trigger religiously, about buy and integrate, buy and integrate, buy and integrate, buy and integrate. It's a different model. It's fundamentally a different model. It's not that one strategy is the only way and that's it. I would say, however, that when you're getting started, if you initially just pull the trigger like a wild man without any real forethought and due diligence into the initial company or companies that you're buying, you may have a huge operational headache and a leaky ship, if you will, that keeps you from being able to go on and buy subsequent companies. My strategy has always been something of a blend between the billionaire investment models of, say, a Buffett and a Charlie Munger, combined with ultimately some of the aggressiveness and the repetition that a roll-up model has. And what I mean by that is, again, on those initial 1, 2, or 3 acquisitions you make for an investment group that's going to be focused on acquisitions in a specific sector, I think it's extremely important that you buy the right company so that 1, they don't become operational burdens, 2, so they don't become leaky as far as their cash flow, 3, so that you build a proper financial statement, proper balance sheets, and proper P&Ls, and equally so that you ensure that you build some financial credibility, your ability to pay out the lenders, your ability to, if you have investors, to make sure that they get their preferred rates of return, that you really build a strong base case. And then from that place, I'm then a believer that you can, once you build the standard operating procedures and a strong operational protocol for how these businesses in that specific sector work, then part two is you can become much more aggressive. One, because you have a strong base. Two, you know exactly how to operate this thing. And then you can start making lots of acquisitions potentially and follow more of a traditional roll-up model. So that's the difference. A roll-up model is about speed. It's about repeated acquisitions. It's about integrating them into the standard operating procedure that you create for your company, and you buy. The great billionaire investors, they're more of opportunistic buyers. They will buy distressed businesses. They know how to shore up. They may buy great businesses that are just owned by a party that no longer wants to be the owner of that business. And, there's not one way to Rome, but I would say to you that you can learn from the roll-up model, you can learn from the Berkshire Hathaway model, and you can, in many respects, take the best of both worlds and integrate them into what you want to do as a business person. I think the riskier of the two is the roll-up model. If you only take the ideas from the roll-up model of just pull the trigger, just pull the trigger, just pull the trigger, just pull the trigger. I say that definitively because if you just pull the trigger without even know what you're shooting at, you may shoot a friendly fire. You may have the proverbial friendly fire. You may quite literally buy something that's going to rip your own arm off. And I know from firsthand experience that people who buy bad companies at the initial starting point, when they aren't insulated with a lot of cash and they don't have the insulation to really protect them, right? If you buy an initial company that's a dud in your first 1 or 2 or 3 acquisitions, good luck executing on a roll-up strategy, because you will be putting out fires nonstop. You will be leaking cash. You will be struggling. You will be in dire straits. And that's, of course, not the foundation that a lender, an investor, nor yourself is going to be able to build from. So those initial acquisitions are paramount. It's why I really recommend for those of you who are trying to get started that you study the investing grades and buy great companies. You can never go wrong buying great companies. You sincerely can't. If you buy great companies repeatedly over a long period of time, you will become wealthy. Like, you can't argue the fact that if you buy great companies only, that you'll do well, as long as you don't buy them at a terrible basis, meaning you don't buy them at an overpriced valuation. But assuming you buy great companies at fair market value or better, over time you will, assuming you know how to operate the damn thing, you'll do very, very well. But if you want to put nitrous into the race car, if you will, right? If you want to put some high burning fuel into the race car, then that's the roll-up model, right? But again, the roll-up model works best once you're a master at running this business. Immediately saying I'm going to execute on a roll-up model, while ambitious and respectable in many, many ways, is misguided if you haven't even run one successfully yet. At least insofar as it leaves you open to a ton of exposure and liability, and ultimately it increases your odds of failure massively. And I know stories of this. I'm not going to name names because I don't want to put people down, but I know definitely, absolutely stories of people who tried to execute on a roll-up model and they believed in only pulling the trigger as opposed to actually optimizing operations and building strong SOPs and a strong management team first. And as a result of only following the roll-up model, they woke up a year and a half later and all of their businesses were in the red, and bankruptcy is what followed, right? And so that's the problem with not viewing business buying from an investment lens, especially before you're rich and wealthy and you have a ton of cash flow and you've built a great foundation, is if you don't respect business buying for what it is in the operational side of things, I just think you get burned. This is why I believe you blend the roll-up model with the Berkshire Hathaway style of thinking. And you ultimately create what I would argue to be the best of both worlds. And I specifically espouse that your first 2 to 3 to 4 acquisitions, you really make closer to the Warren Buffett side of thinking, where you buy great companies that have great operations, great management. That allows you to really gain a strong understanding of how a company in the specific sector that you're going to be buying businesses in should operate. You really do everything you can to create clear standard operating procedures from this great business or 2 or 3 that you've initially bought to build that strong foundation. And then once you have the great SOPs, once you have the great management team, once you have the great culture, once you have the great marketing initiatives and the great branding and the great reputation, and really the great foundational company of maybe 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 different locations, once you have that, now I think you can be more aggressive with the roll-up model. You obviously at this point will have greater financials. You'll have better financials that you can present to bankers, to lenders. You have obviously the reputation that you can bring to sellers to say, hey, look, we've been there, done that. We know how to transact. We know how to buy these companies in this sector, and we know how to integrate them into this wonderful company that we have. And then at this point, I think it's easier to go on a true roll-up model style of ascent and really be much more likely to be successful. But I think the risk becomes when you view your first acquisition and your second acquisition from the just do it, just pull the trigger, just roll it up model, because you might just buy a lemon. And this is also why I've talked about in prior videos why I'm reluctant for people to go out and try to acquire businesses using 100% seller finance for those first initial acquisitions, something that is very popularly talked about for people who are telling you how to buy businesses. And obviously the reason they're talking about 100% seller finance is because it's a sexy dream to sell, and it basically is sellable to anybody, because anybody can buy a business if it's 100% seller finance or if it's 100% finance. You don't even need a nickel of your own money, right? But the problem with that, I can say from experience, is businesses that are being offered for 100% seller finance, by and large, are duds. Not always, but by and large, they're duds. And I mean, I've talked about this in prior videos, but why would you finance 100% of the business if you had a great business? Now, I know what you're going to say. Oh, because they have a heart attack, or they have, they're getting dementia, or they're going through some terrible life event, and that's why they're going to finance the whole thing just to get it off their hands. And that may be true in unique and specialized scenarios, and if you're able to find that, by all means, go for it. But I don't believe on building a business strategy based on the very, very, very unlikely events that don't happen often. Now, again, I'm starting to more share my own thoughts, so you're welcome to disagree. And by all means, if you disagree, share below. I'm open to always having a conversation with you. But I just don't like following traditional narratives about what this community of M&A believes, just because it's quote unquote common practice or common belief that, there's a certain way of doing things doesn't mean I'm going to immediately agree on that and sign off on that. This channel and what I do and what I'm about is about studying a multitude of successful people and trying to learn the best parts of what each of these groups or people or theories have to offer. And then, of course, I'm integrating all of that into my business processes. Because to me, it's not about being loyal to a tribe. It's about being successful. Period. It's about being successful. And so for me, being successful means being discerning. And that's really what I'm, if nothing else, hoping that you're getting out of these recent videos I've talked about as far as how billionaires invest, how billionaire roll-ups are built, etc., is you're learning to think in a discerning way where you question things, you look for the best of multiple processes or business models, if you will, and then based on your own risk versus reward tolerance, your own operational skills, your own capital that you have or don't have, et cetera, based on all of these unique variables that only you are familiar with. It's my hope that from all of that, you then make the right decisions about how you want to go out and buy companies and the strategies you want to follow, because there is more than one path to Rome. Look, people have built wealth in a multitude of ways. They just have. So anybody who tells you there's only one way to get wealthy is crazy by definition. I mean, it literally doesn't even make sense, because obviously it's not true. Okay, so my goal here is to talk to you about different ways that people are doing it. What I'm doing personally, not that I'm where I want to be, I'm 1% of the way there, but I am in the trenches every single day as far as buying businesses and valuing businesses and speaking with investors and lenders and sellers and the whole game. So I'm in those trenches, and again, I just want to talk to you from a place of studying the best, but also doing the deals and being in the trenches myself. That's who I am. That's what I do. If you're interested in more of that, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thumbs up the video if you've taken value from this. Share your comments below, and I'll talk to you in the next video.